glad to be here together. I apologize for, technical difficulties, technical difficulty. I guess it's sort of the story of our lives these days. But thank you all for your persistence and
I felt like this is where I came in with you.
Right? Marjorie, it's been 6 months and nothing has changed.
But you know what? Actually, yes, something has. I no longer get upset about it.
That's true.
I just kind of go, oh, yes. It's not, I didn't do something wrong.
Nope, just Zoom gonna Zoom, I guess. Okay. All right, terrific.
Well, thank you for being persistent with us.
Oh,
and being here for us.
We are so glad to be here. Yeah, so Becca and I, we ended the meeting, we restarted it, we tried joining from the website versus joining from the app. Who knows? But I am so glad that we are all here now. I am going to paste into the chat the link to our source sheet for today's study. And I'll give you all a couple of moments to bring that up. And then I'm also going to share it on the screen. So if you're not able to pull it up on your own device, that is okay. So for those of you who haven't learned with me before or in a while, I am Stefani Carlson. I am the educator here, and I am a very informal teacher. So if at any time you want to take yourself off mute and you want to contribute to the conversation, or you have a question, or you have something that you want to add, please do that. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation, and we are very privileged to have with us Becca Schwartzberg, who is going to be sort of our facilitator also for the conversation. So if I'm not looking your way and you want to say something, Becca will draw my attention, or you can put it in the chat, or you can use the, let's see, do we have you can use the reactions, the little emoji things at the bottom. However you want to participate is good with me. I'm going to paste the link again one more time for those who are just coming on. And then I'm going to share my screen and we'll go ahead and begin. So when it is my custom and the custom of my teacher to begin text study with a moment of remembrance and dedication, and that seems particularly important this Yom Kippur season, especially as so many of us are worshiping from our homes or from places where we're not physically together, to take a moment to think of those who are not around the table, who we wish that we could be spending this moment of study with. I am, as I almost always am on Yom Kippur, I am thinking of my mother, who is alive and well and living in Cincinnati, but with whom I have not been able to pray in person during the holiday season in quite some time. Does anyone else?
Yes, that's her.
it, Judy. So we'll begin our study with a moment of blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So these words, Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us, who makes us holy with your commandments, and who has commanded us to engage with words of Torah. And so as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today,
The screen.
we're looking towards texts that are familiar, that we can look at in a new way. And I thought that one of our most familiar texts is the Shehechianu prayer. You see it here in the middle of the sheet. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who has given us life, Shehechianu, right? You see chai in there. V'kiyamanu, and kept us here. We've come to here, and v'higianu, and we have arrived lazman hazeh, at this season. We frequently hear the blessings sung. I thought it might be. So this is off of our website. This is Cantor Simmons chanting the blessing.
Shehechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
So we should all have heard that, right? We heard it this morning, or we heard it last night at the beginning of our service. Right? And so the blessing of Shehechianu, it's our all-purpose blessing. It's the blessing that we say when there's not a specific blessing or a more specific blessing for that moment, right? It's generally when we're doing something that occurs infrequently from which we derive pleasure or benefit. It's also said at the beginning of holidays, but not sad holidays. It's said the first time we perform a mitzvah in a given year. So next week when we lashev basukah, when we sit in our sukkah, we will say Shehechianu. Okay? Before we ate matzah on Passover, we said Shehechianu. Before we listened to the Megillah, we said Shehechianu. In fact, many of us, the first time we learn Shehechianu, right, is by singing it on Hanukkah, right? That's when we light our Hanukkah candles. We also say Shehechianu when we do something that we haven't done in a long time, or we haven't done in a specific period of time. We say Shehechianu when we eat a new fruit for the first time in a given year, as we enjoy that sweetness. We say Shehechianu when we see a friend who we haven't seen in at least a month. And our sages tell us that it counts even to receive a letter from a friend who we haven't heard from in a long time. So as we recreate or reconnect with our friends, we say Shehechianu. We say Shehachianu when we move to a new home, or when we acquire land, or when we acquire a significant possession. And of course, there's a whole discussion, right, over what constitutes a significant possession, right? Underwear is specifically excluded, but other articles of clothing might be included, for example. We say Shehachianu to welcome a new child. We say Shehachianu as part of conversion. We say Shehachianu when we arrive in Israel. There are all kinds of times when we say Shehachianu. And we would think that such a blessing of thanksgiving, right? It is sort of the ultimate blessing of thanksgiving and gratitude, that it would be no question that we would say Shehachianu for Yom Kippur, for Rosh Hashanah, or for Yom Kippur, for our high holy days, right? And yet, we see in the first of the texts that we're going to look at today, we see that this is not always the case.
Stephanie, before we move on, we have a question in the chat about what is the Pidyon HaBen?
So the Pidyon HaBen is a ceremony. It's the redemption of the firstborn. So it's a ceremony that that observant families will have, or a way of recognizing a firstborn child, right? So with giving of tzedakah, usually for the first boy, but in egalitarian we would recognize that for a girl too. So, but Pidyon HaBen is literally redemption of the son. Right? So it's the ceremony of tzedakah that we do to celebrate a firstborn child. Thank you for that. And I am unable to see the chat. So Becca, if you can, it is.
Yep, I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, there it is. Okay, I have it back now. I'm going to put, since we've had a couple of people join, I'm going to put the link to the source sheet one more time in the chat, now that I can see it again.
Yeah, that happened.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we see that while we sort of take for granted that, of course, we would say Shehachianu when we come to Rosh Hashanah, we come to Yom Kippur, when we come to these most holy of our days, we would think, of course, we'll say Shehachianu when we come to these days. But you'll see here in this text that wasn't always the case, right? And so this text here is from Talmud. It's from Masachet Eruvin, so it's from the tractate Eruvin, which is the section of the Talmud dedicated to talking about rules about boundaries, really. And it says here, so the English here, the way the English works is that the words in bold are the direct translation. This is the Davidson Talmud from Sefaria, and the way the translation works is that the words in bold are the direct translation, the literal translation of the Hebrew or Aramaic. This is Hebrew. And the words that are not in bold are commentaries to help us understand it, to help us put it in context. So Rabbah said, when I was in the house of study of Rav Huna, we raised this question. What is the halakha? What is the rule with regard to saying Lomar Zman, to say the Shehachianu, the blessing for time, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? The two sides of the dilemma are as follows. Do we say that since these festivals come at fixed times of the year, right? These are festivals that are mentioned in the Torah. that we recite the blessing? Or do we say perhaps that since these festivals are not called pilgrimage festivals, right? They are not counted along with Sukkot and Shavuot and Pesach as the three, right, the three pilgrimage festivals, the three times that we gather at that the Israelites would gather at the temple, right? So since they are not called pilgrimage festivals, that we do not recite. And the commentary gives a suggestion that we wouldn't, that maybe we wouldn't recite because the joy that they bring is insufficient, right? So sort of the deeper question here is, what differentiates Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur from the pilgrimage festivals, from Sukkot and Pesach and Shavuot? And there's an extensive conversation that follows.
Oh, God.
And they decide, of course, because we did it last night, they decide that yes, we should say Shehechianu for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But what do you think was the dilemma? What do you see here? Andy, do you have a thought? Anyone? What do you think the dilemma is here? They said they raised a dilemma. Why is it a dilemma? Okay. So the question was, as the conversation continued, right? They said, well, of course you should be allowed to say it whenever you want, right? But the question is whether you were obligated, right? And they decided that they were. And so my question is, if you're avoiding saying Shehechianu at a time that isn't joyous, right? You know, like when we avoid saying, we don't want to say Happy Yom Kippur, right? And I think it sort of follows in that same kind of thought, is that, you know, Yom Kippur is a solemn and important holiday, not necessarily a joyous holiday. Or maybe it is. Is it a joyous holiday? Is the opportunity that we have that's created by Yom Kippur, does that bring us the joy? And so my question, as I thought about this, I thought, well, what connection is there between the Shehechianu prayer and Yom Kippur that would make it so important that not only that we say Shehechianu on Yom Kippur, but that this whole discussion was recorded, right? That it was so important, that the relationship was so important that the discussion about it would be recorded.
I was thinking that they could say it on Rosh Hashanah because that's a happy holiday. But then again, I thought about it, the fact that that begins the period of time, the 10 days where one is supposed to make amends to fellow human beings. So that when we get to Yom Kippur, we can ask for forgiveness. So I get, maybe it's the solemnity of the period of time.
Thank you. Got that?
I was thinking the same thing. Like, it definitely doesn't make sense to not say it on Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur, I can see the dilemma, but Rosh Hashanah, I see like no dilemma really. That's
Peter, did you want to? Were you just adjusting your? Okay. So I was wondering if there was something about the Shehechianu blessing itself that might be important to, or that might contribute to the work that we do on Yom Kippur. And it brought me to this idea of blessings, and particularly of blessings of gratitude. And that blessings of gratitude are an important way of connecting ourselves with ourselves and connecting ourselves with the world around us and with the other people in our world, right? So, when you talked about doing the work of Teshuvah, right? Doing the work of the 10 days, right? Are blessings of gratitude a way of doing that? And so I looked at, this is our next set of texts here. Right? Every high school valedictorian knows that when you want to start with something, you look in the dictionary, right? Except that when you're looking at Talmud, you don't start with Webster, you start with Jastrow. And so I looked up blessing, bracha, in the dictionary. And we see blessing, bestowal of property, good wishes, choice, plenty. So all of these things are things that we want to connect with for the new year. And then we have this idea of benediction. We have this idea that through our words, through the words of blessing, we can actually change what it is that's being blessed. And then there's this idea that's brought here that I've put in bold. This particular bold is mine, right? And it says, man, people must not taste anything without a blessing. What do you think about that? Comment, question. Marjorie, go ahead.
You know, this may be too simplistic, but what is there to be more grateful for, in a sense, than, if you think that, between the 10 days is who will live and who will die in the next year, when you reach another Yom Kippur, you've been granted the gift of life for another year, and you've arrived at Yom Kippur again as a time for introspection. I guess I never knew that prayer was just for joyous things. I just didn't know that. So I really loved hearing all the times that we're supposed to say that prayer. I probably just said it whenever it was time, and had never been taught that it was only used at these very special things. But really, to arrive at another Yom Kippur is a huge blessing. And I don't think I say Yom Kippur even correct. I was just corrected about that by a Christian friend. I'm sorry, y'all. I was raised in Victoria, Texas with no rabbi, so forgive my English pronunciation of everything.
One of my favorite things about working with B'nai Mitzvah students is, or has been over the last couple of years, is learning that Hebrew does have a Texas accent, that like there is a Texas accent for Hebrew.
Well, I just had a Christian friend say it the way, I said, oh, well, that's how city people say it.
It's like English, right? I mean, Hebrew is a living language. There's no right way to pronounce things. It's fine.
I think Marjorie's onto something. I mean, what greater gift is there than the gift of life?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that what Yom Kippur is all about?
Yeah, for sure. And this. So Marjorie, you mentioned like that you said it when it was time, and you didn't think about what the times were, right? And one of the things that was important about the argument, right, or this dilemma, right, is that you can't that can and have to, right, were really the horns of the dilemma, right? You can say this blessing whenever you feel moved to say it, right? And you should say it whenever you feel moved to say it, right? But it's, when does it become obligation, right? When are we obligated? When does it become part of the ritual, right? When does it become part of obligation? Right? And so then I saw an article in which Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein made a really interesting connection, right? So, the Hebrew, the structure of Hebrew language, right, is that it is based on root words, right? So frequently words that share letters will share meaning. And so bet resh kaf, which is the root for blessing, also shares a root with berecha, right, which is a pond or a lake. I thought, well, that's interesting. Right? So sometimes when we put things next to each other, it tells us something that we didn't see about what we were looking at before. And so first we have this idea that we shouldn't taste anything without a blessing, right? Blessing is acknowledgement of the presence of God in the world. And then we have this connection to a pond or a lake, and not just any kind of pond or a lake, but the same kind of a pond or a lake that is related to the mikvah, is related to a ritual, to the living waters in which we purify ourselves. And so if the pond cleanses the unclean by immersion, and it's the same root as the word for blessing, how might blessings be part of our becoming clean on Yom Kippur? It almost sounds like something out of Alice in Wonderland, right? How is a raven like a writing desk, right? Right? How is a pond, but how is a pond like a blessing? And so thinking about this idea of ritual immersion and how we use blessings to immerse ourselves in the world. Right? So if you've studied with me before, or you know, you've heard me talk about gratitude practice, and you've probably heard Rabbi Fixler talk about gratitude practice as well, right? But the idea of noticing and acknowledging things for which we are grateful on a daily basis. This idea of counting our blessings. How might that be part of our practice for Yom Kippur? And so the Talmud gives us another, the Yerushalmi, the Talmud gives us a story. And this is the very end. This story is the very end of Tractate Kiddushin in the Talmud Yerushalmi. And it says, in the future, a person will give a judgment and an accounting over everything that his eyes saw and he did not eat. So this idea of din vecheshbon, right? We talk about cheshbon neshavesh as the work that we do in the days of awe, right? And a din is a judgment, right? So here are words that we hear all the time in our discussions of Yom Kippur, right? We talk about this on an annual basis, and also, so now we're talking about it in the future, in the world to come, at the end of time, right? But Yom Kippur is a little taste of that. And so in the future, a person will give a judgment and an accounting over everything that his eyes saw and he did not eat.
Sounds like he's on a diet.
Right? Kosrat eno velo ochel, and he didn't eat. Right? And the word ochel can be metaphoric also. You know, it's not just physical eating, right? But it can be experience, right? And so when we think about the work that we do in the days of awe, we think about the work that we do on Yom Kippur, when we talk about our cheshbon nefesh, right? We're not just talking about, and we heard in this morning's service, right? We're not just thinking about the things that we did wrong. We're thinking about the opportunities that we squandered for doing good. And so here we have a story. Rabbi Elazar paid attention to this teaching and instituted a practice. And what did Elazar do? He gathered small coins. He saved his money in order to purchase and eat every kind of fruit with them once a year. So my question is, why? Why would Rabbi Elazar institute this practice? And what's the significance of the once a year part? And that made me think about our list of things. I'm going to apologize, like you might want to avert your eyes if you get dizzy easily. I'm going to scroll up. It made me think about this list of things that we do to say Shechianu. Now the the Yerushalmi doesn't say anything about Shafianu, right? I mean, we know that Shafianu was a thing that happened in that time. It's mentioned other places in the Talmud, but it's not mentioned in there. But it made me think about the fact that when we eat a new fruit for the first time in a year, that's a time when we say Shafianu. And so maybe by instituting this practice where he's trying to eat every kind of fruit that is available to him once a year, not only is he sort of taking this literally, right, about eating of all of the things that he sees, but that in going about it in such a way, he is maximizing his opportunity for saying Shafianu, right? So each time he's able to eat one of these fruits, each time he eats one of these fruits, it's an opportunity to have a moment of gratitude, right? So not only so when you eat a new fruit, you say two blessings, right? You say the blessing over the fruit, right? The Borei Pri Ha'etz, and you say Shafianu. So he's giving himself the opportunity to maximize the times that he says Shafianu.
He also wants to be very efficient, get it all done at once.
Mm-hmm.
Then he doesn't have to do it the rest of the year.
So do you think he's doing it all at once? I didn't read it that way. That's an interesting interpretation. I didn't read it that way. I didn't read it that he was doing it all at once. Like I was imagining that he did each fruit in its season.
Oh, okay. I thought he gathered them all together at one time and, takes a bite of one and says the prayer, takes a bite of the next one, says the prayer, and he's finished for the year.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yes, and I actually had Andrew. I had thought that he saved his money up and bought it all at one time, and of course that doesn't make any sense in the sense that fruits do come at different kinds of years. So I had a third interpretation, but the piece is that. He had to save up change that he could use because it did not require change, small coins. Because people, that whole thing about money changers, if you were buying at a fruit stand, and we probably have had that experience, they can't take a large bill. You have to have small amount of change. So that's what he saved, was his small amount of change. So he wouldn't have to get change for what he said that did not require change. Otherwise, you have to go to the temple where they had the money changers or whatever. But anyway, eat every kind of,
like if you go to the farmer's market, right?
Right. So you have to have the change. So he saved small change so he could buy. And so the real question is, you couldn't eat every kind of produce with people once a year, because it's not in season once a year. And I don't think they had the great refrigeration we have. So I guess he was buying it all through the year and then ate in its time fruit once a year. Isn't it interesting that one sentence could have so many different understandings?
And that's Talmud right there.
I think that's human beings right there.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about this? What do you think about this idea of Rabbi Elazar trying to live this teaching? And what do you think about this teaching?
And is that the teaching? Because I really had thought, uh, uh, if I was going to say that, think about all the things that my eye saw that I didn't eat, in times of plenty, that's a good thing. In times of poverty, that's a bad thing. I might have food I needed or wanted and I couldn't do. So I guess our assumption is that for them, it was a time of not plenty. And if they saw things and needed it to eat, they wouldn't have it. So he was fixing that for them.
That's really interesting. I had not thought at all about this idea of times of plenty versus times of fullness. Wow. So it actually, I'm gonna skip for just a second. So thinking again about blessings and thinking about times when we say Shahachianu, right? So there's this idea of sort of generic blessings, right? That's brought up in Tractate Baruch, right? And it says here, for rain and other good tidings, one recites the special blessing. Blessed is God who is good and does good, right? Hatov v'hamitiv. And then even for bad tidings, one recites a special blessing, right? And we know it is the blessing that we say when someone dies, right? Baruch Dayan HaMemet. And unfortunately, we've had all too many reasons to say it this year. And then similarly, when one has built a new house or purchased new vessels, right, he recites Shachianu. And then explains that the general principle here is that we are to recite a blessing for the bad just as we do for the good. Nevarech al hara'a ne'en al hatova. Bless the bad along with the good. Ve'al hatova me'en hara, right?
I think that makes sense. Without bad, you can't appreciate anything good. Everything's perfect all the
time. It also reminds me of the part in our Yom Kippur liturgy about tefillah, tzedakah, right? That we change, that we temper the decree, right, with tefillah, teshuvah, and tzedakah, right, with prayer, repentance, and charity, right, with that what. And the question there, right, is, are you changing what's going to happen, or are you changing how you interpret what happens? Right. So how does prayer, right? We talked earlier about a little bit about the transformative piece of blessing, right? We looked when we saw in the definitions, right, that prayer can purify us. Prayer can immerse us in the world. And how does prayer help transform that which is bad? And so I want to be mindful of the time. It is now 2:00. If any of you have signed up for the 2:00 thing and want to go to it, please go and do that. You won't hurt my feelings. But I know that we did start a few minutes late, and so if you would like to stay another 5 or 10 minutes, I am happy to do that with you. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm wondering here about this idea of blessings for the bad, or blessings for things that we think of are bad, and that how Shechianu, which is not the blessing that we say for this, right? But the idea, and it's explained later on, that this principle is the important part, and which blessing you use for which thing is not the important part, right? If the blessing that comes out of your mouth in any given moment is one of these three or something else, that's the correct blessing, right? It's the kavanah, not the kava, right? It's the intention, not the specific blessing. That's the important part. And so it has me thinking about this idea of blessing, and how the blessings connect us with ourselves, connect us with our world, and connect us with the divine.
Well, sometimes we do things just out of habit. And when we do things out of habit, we're really not conscious, or very conscious, of what we're doing. I think saying a prayer makes us stop and recognize the significance of the event that we're about to undertake.
I think that's really right, Andrew. And I was thinking about the one about if you haven't talked to a friend in 30 days, and of course, a lot of us are losing people this year. Mm-hmm. And being mindful of how special it is when we can see someone is, I love that, even a letter.
Thank you, Marjorie. So that was so where I want to kind of tie this all together and bring us home into something that we can do, right? Is this idea. So Rabbi Elazar chose to interpret this teaching in this way, right? With giving himself opportunity to eat of every fruit, and so to say the blessings, right? And Marjorie, it's interesting that you picked up on the one that I did too. That we have this whole list of suggested occasions, right? We have this whole list of suggested occasions when we can say Shechianu, and this idea of seeing a friend who has not been seen in 30 days. Or thinking about, well, what are these other things, right? What is a pidyon haben? What birth of a child, right? But what constitutes a significant possession? But particularly in this time when we are physically isolated from each other, one of the powerful things that blessing can do is give us this sense of connection. And if we can take it, as Rabbi Elazar took the fruit thing literally, right? If we can take this idea of connection literally, and take this idea of immersion literally, and if we think about, how can we maximize our opportunities to say Shechianu, right? And if we create, what would creating Rabbi Elazar's fruit practice look like around this idea of seeing a friend who's not been seen in 30 days, or getting a letter from a friend who's not been seen in 30 days? What would it mean if this year, one of the things that we did was we reached out to people we've lost touch with? and created those opportunities for moments of blessing. You know, based on the Facebook feeds of some of my friends, some of us, I know there are some people who are working on the birth of a child part too, but but I think, you know, for most of us, right, the accessible pieces of these, right, or this idea of eating new food or enjoying something, right, this idea of doing or experiencing something that incurs infrequently from which one derives pleasure or benefit. Right? What are the things that fill our soul and give us the opportunity to express gratitude?
Well, it's almost a takeoff on meditation.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of meditation is to be in the moment. And when one says the prayer, one is stopping to think about the moment. We're not thinking about after or before. So maybe in one sense, it's a type of meditation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a way of bringing mindfulness. And I'll leave us with just this last little text. It says, "A blessing is found only in an object that is hidden. As it is stated, God will command God's blessing upon you in your barns." Right, and there's a pun there, right? That you know, again, just like we have blessings and ponds, right? We have things that are hidden in barns. But it reinforces and brings home this idea that little things, right? Little things can be the source of transformation.
Mm.
Little things can be the places where we find blessing. And so as we come to the close of this study on this Yom Kippur, I want to express gratitude to all of you for sticking with us through trials and technical difficulties, and for being here and being present and blessing me and with your presence here. And my hope, my prayer, my blessing to you is that you are able to find those small moments of blessing, and that you are able to recognize them, and that they are able to grow for you, and that you this year find practices that for you bring the most blessing, the most opportunity for blessing into your lives and your homes and your barns this year. Wishing you all a Shana Tova. Thank you. Any last comments, or?
No, this is very enlightening for me. I mean, I got a little bit deeper. I didn't say much, but there's a lot of things to think about. There really are. And I took a bunch of notes, and I'm going to delve into some of this a little bit more. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's kind of interesting that you chose that prayer in particular, because my mom actually used to sing the Shehianu to me as a lullaby every night. Like,
Oh, wow.
Aw. Thank you,
Neat.
Stephanie.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Shana Tova, everyone, and Gamar Tov.
Gamar Tov. Nice to see you, Stephanie.
Nice to see you, Judy. You're getting so good at Zoom.
Yeah, that's why I was late. I had to ask